I'm Bill Kimmer. I'm the managing member of Metro Mortgage Consulting. With me today is Terry Boyd, and Terry was the manager of the branch at Fidelity Title, where I did a lot of closings. We are doing a series, a 9-part series of short clips regarding short sales, foreclosures, and options that are available to people. This is section number 8, and what we're going to be talking about is the title point of view. So Terry,
Title and escrow.
Title and escrow. And so Terry, you worked for Fidelity Title and you work for Fidelity. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I can. I was the branch manager for the West Metro branch. I've been in the industry for 22 years, and recently I have been promoted to the development training manager within the Fidelity family. And so I've worked closely prior to that closing short sales.
Okay. In your branch, can you give me some idea of how many transactions you closed on an average month?
Yes. Out of the resales that came into the branch, we had approximately 78% that were short sales.
78%. Okay. And out of that percentage, you probably had different ratios as to transactions that were closing and transactions that didn't close.
Yes.
I know that working with a number of agents that I work with and looking at the statistics from the National Association of Realtors, their statistics state that there is about an 80% failed sale rate when a real estate agent attempts to do a short sale on their own. What's your experience with that?
There is, and a lot of that I attribute to lack of knowledge and lack of experience and not knowing what to do. I will tell you, out of the transactions that we have, we estimate about 62% of the short sales that do actually successfully close, and we contribute that to agents and sellers procuring a short sale negotiator.
Okay. My experience has been very similar to that. That is, if a short sale negotiator is not involved, the failure rate is pretty high.
It's true.
And what I tend to find with that is the fact that real estate agents are, they're real estate agents. They come into the industry to buy and sell real estate and represent sellers and that sort of thing. Short sales are a completely different animal. We get into all sorts of negotiations, deficiency language, and so forth, and they're a very complicated transaction. From your side of it, from title side, what do you see with that?
Well, they're long and they're involved, very lengthy, and sometimes the lack of communication between the agents and the parties, but most of all, getting that successful demand letter from the short sale teams at the banks, and normally it would be first and second position lien holders.
Yeah. So I think what you're talking about at that point is, for a short sale to close, we have to get an approval letter. That approval letter is going to state the terms and conditions that the sale is going to be allowed to occur. Typically what we're looking at is a approval letter that allows a certain amount of money to go to the first and second liens. We're also talking about deficiency language. And for the transaction to close, the liens need to be removed, but the deficiency does not need to be taken out. From my perspective, we work very hard to keep the buyer and the seller, and particularly the seller, involved, knowing exactly what the language is looking at and what chances are of deficiencies being released or not released. Do you run into situations where people actually show up to closing and didn't know?
It's extremely important, and it's, first of all, escrow and title, they cannot negotiate. They're a third-party position. We can't even advise. And so it's good for an escrow officer to have a short sale negotiator, be able to do that and communicate that clearly between the parties. But I will tell you that lots of times at the round table, when we bring the buyers and the sellers in to sign the actual documents, buyers and sellers do read, review, and approve the short sale letter. Now, we can't tell them what's in it, what's not in it, what they should look for, what should they not look for. We just ask them to read, review, and approve. Now, in there, if it states that the lender has the right to come after them for the deficiency amount, I've seen the seller say, I'm not proceeding. I don't like that language, therefore I'm not going forward. And it can sale fail at the midnight hour.
And that can be a situation where the seller hadn't been advised properly as to what the language was and what the possible ramifications were.
Correct.
Okay. So Terry, as you know, we've been through a number of transactions, and one thing that we do is we set up a email treat, basically, and we send out weekly updates to the buyer, the seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, and to escrow.
Yes.
Advising you as to where we are in the transaction, what's going on, and we also very clearly talk about the language that comes out in the approval letter and so forth. From your perspective, how helpful is it getting these weekly updates on what's going on?
Well, that's extremely helpful. It makes it a team situation, which is very important in today's short sales. But more than that, having the short sale letter approval demand up front and quickly, because we need to have a copy of that, and you always provide that. We don't get that at the last minute. There's no surprises.
Also, what a lot of people don't understand is once we have the approval letter, doesn't mean we're approved to close the transaction. Often we have to go through and prepare a HUD, or you prepare a HUD and we send it on.
Correct.
We work again as a team. You prepare the HUD, I
Correct.
review it, we make sure it's all in shape. Can you explain a little bit of the things that come up on the final HUD and maybe how it doesn't go with the approval letter and problems that arise from that?
Absolutely. Some of them may stipulate in the approval letter that the short sale lender will not approve certain fees. Certain fees that absolutely have to be paid to third parties. We have no control over that, and so we have to adhere to the fees, so sometimes that can be an issue. And we let you know on this HUD, who's going to pay the fees. You communicate to us how they're going to be handled, and we follow the instructions.
So when we've done our final HUDs and we get them in, because we have done such a diligent job of looking at the approval letter, making sure our HUDs are in compliance,
Yes.
our HUDs pretty much sail through. Absolutely. Which is not always the case.
That's correct.
Okay.
Not at all.
The other thing that comes up, which I know people don't know about, is they come into closing, they sign the papers, they've brought in their money, they think everything is done, we've sent off funds to the bank, we've sent off the approval to the bank, everybody thinks everything is done, and it's not, is it?
It's not.
And can you just say some of the things that pop up on that and how we've handled those?
Oh, we have had lenders absolutely deny or reject our wire on a payoff, because there may have been mentioned, maybe there was an agreement that the borrower or the seller would sign a note. And that may not be necessarily in the approval letter, but it was a certain condition that the other parties understood. And if we're not a party to that, we don't know it, we don't acquire it, and therefore there's no communication. And we go along through the closing thinking everything is fine, and then we get an alert that the lender has rejected our funds. We've
also run into situations where they've been over the top, crazy, meticulous on the fact that maybe an approval or a notary stamp wasn't in the right place on something and have pulled it back. And what people may not understand is that we basically have a very, very short time period in which to get this corrected.
Extremely.
And this involves dropping everything, getting the parties to the table, bringing them in. And as you know, this is what we do full time. We're here, and when these crises emerge, we have very tight communications with the seller and the buyer. We have their cell phones. We know where they're at. We have hunted people down at
well, you've taken
conventions.
Control of that. That's what's been nice for the escrow point of view. Again, we can't negotiate, we can't, but you take control. You've at the last minute called the other lenders and said, what's the story? And you followed up, you've communicated, and you made sure that they got what they needed so that we could rewire the funds, they'd accept it, done deal.
Right. So from your perspective, it sounds like third-party negotiators are highly recommended?
Highly recommended. Highly.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'd just like to add that these short sales are long and involved. And I feel that the success ratio is higher if there's a short sale negotiator there, simply because they know what they're doing. And banks do work with these short sale negotiators because they communicate. They are prompt and accurate with the paperwork, which is extremely important. Doesn't add any delays. And that is huge when it comes to the closing table.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in to see us.
Thank you for having me.